We have 5 speakers. I wanted to start without delay so that there is time for discussion at the end, And
Right.
yeah, so of course, we don't have too many people right now who have logged in into this particular session. 15, I think I can see. But I think we can begin if we all agree.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we
Okay,
should.
so welcome to the Information Technology and Digital Learning Tools session. This session, as I mentioned, will be 1 hour and 45 minutes long. And to chair this session, we have a very reputed academician, Professor G. Mahesh, who is a principal scientist, the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, National Institute of Science, Communication and Information Resources, Delhi. And we have 2 rapporteurs, Pamyo Chamroy and Dr. Silas Wonampa, who will be recording the proceedings. So without any delay, I'd like to hand over the session to Professor Mahesh. Please determine as you see fit. Over to you, Professor.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shalmi, for inviting me to chair this session. As I can see, this is a parallel session 1A on information technology and digital learning tools. As per the schedule shared with me, the session is from 2 o'clock to 3:30. This is what I see here. But then you did say that it is for 1 hour and 45 minutes. I'll anyway, try and go with this program schedule that has been shared with all of us, which means that with 5 speakers, we would have about. I'm not sure if do we have question answer session at the end, because it will depend on whether we are taking questions or not. So do we generally have
I think we
question answer
should.
session?
I think we should.
Okay, so if we are going to have question answer session at the end, then we let us stick to 15 to 20 minutes, per session, per speaker rather. So we,
Uh,
yeah, someone saying something?
Sorry, Professor Mahesh,
Yeah,
I'm interrupting you. For that, I profusely apologize.
no problem.
Okay. In fact, I have to take an exit. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, After my presentation, because I have a couple of meetings to take up.
Okay.
So I do not know whether would it be a good on my part to say like this or not, because I already accepted your, the proposal that yes, I shall be delivering 10-15 minutes presentation. Please, I do not know you try to accommodate me. If possible, suppose if some the participants, those who are participating in my particular session, they wish to have a small, queries and sorts of thing that would it be a good idea to entertain them immediately so that I can take the exit of it.
Yeah,
Is it-
in any case, as I see, you are the first speaker to speak on emerging technologies.
Mhm.
So if we can, have this 2 ways. One is, after each of you speak, we can take the question answer session,
Oh.
question answers, or we can wait for all 5 to end and then take the question answers at the end. But
Mhm.
then, since you say that you have to exit after your talk, I think let's stick to this pattern of having the question answer session immediately after each talk. So the talk of about 15 minutes and about 3 to 4 minutes for question answers. I hope that would be acceptable to all of you. Does anyone have any concern about this arrangement? Okay, so I guess all of you are fine with this. So let's then straight away start, because although the title of this session is Information Technology and Digital Learning Tools, I can see that the topics are varied. We are talking about, there are speakers who are going to talk to us about nanotechnology and also the Naga approach towards negotiation and new age learning, and interesting titles that we see here. So we'll straight away get on with this talk, and I'll invite Dr. Ransin Chung, whose slide is already there on the screen. to begin his talk. Dr. Ransom Chung, what I will do is, in case you go beyond 15 minutes, I would interrupt. I mean, alert you. Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Please proceed.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So can I start taking
Yes,
up
please
my...
do. Please start. Your PowerPoint presentation is visible on the screen.
Okay. Thank you. So good afternoon to one and all. Delegates present in this session. I'm very glad to have this opportunity. Being a unique kind gathering, all Naga scholars come together in one platform for good cause. I would say it's a fantastic thought process. Myself, Dr. G.D. Ramchinchung Aryan, currently working as a professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. By the way, am I audible to you clearly, or shall I speak
Loud
a bit?
and clear. Loud and clear. Perfect.
Very nice. Thank you. So I hail from Wainem village, Manipur state. Prior to taking up my presentation, yes, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Giacomo Yatan, the president of Naga Scholars Association, and his team for offering me this fantastic platform, due to which now I am able to connect with many young and energetic Naga scholars across the globe virtually. Yeah, I do hope that one day we shall have another opportunity to interact each other physically also in a common platform once this pandemic issue gets rid of. Till then, we all of us pray to Almighty God to protect us from this pandemic and let us stay healthy and safe. Well, the topic that I have chosen for today's the interaction in this 10-15 minutes, that is slightly different from the announcement made. For that, again, I would like to apology for it. Maybe, yes, from my end, that the communication was not properly made. Yes, however, the thought process that I'm going to share in this session is a kind of overview, and therefore there shouldn't be much of difference in that. So it's on emerging technologies in transportation engineering. These particular topics I have chosen for the reason that we this Naga people are living in a very in the high altitude areas. Most of us are in a very interior parts. So the developments, to bring the developments among the Naga peoples and the Naga the habitation parts, that is the concern I have as of now. So in that context, I shall be a little bit emphasizing. As we all know, I do not have to talk much on the technology, because the topic that I just would like to take back again, it's emerging technologies in transportation engineering. So here, the topic, it's self-explanatory. It's talking about the technology and the transportation engineering. So how this technology is going to play, important role and at the same time, the transportation engineering. Right. So when I merge these two terminology, then it becomes the technology in transportation engineering. So by the way, as we all know that what is technology? Technology is the use of the scientific knowledge for practical purpose and applications that we all know, whether it may be in the industry or in our daily lives. So basically, whenever we use our scientific knowledge to achieve some specific purpose, we are using technology. So it can be anything from the discovery of the wheel all the way up to computers and MP3 players and so on and so forth. So most probably, yeah, the wheel invention is the most important technological advances in human history. And yet it's super simple. Just for instance, yes, this wheel was invented to serve as a quarter wheels around 3500 BC in Mesopotamia, right? So now the role of, after having understanding the technology briefly, then now I'm trying to connect these two terminology, transportation engineering. Now, why I'm looking at the transportation engineering, as I mentioned a little while ago, I'm more, I'm giving more impetus on the development or connectivity of the Nagas habitats. So, transportation engineering is the applications of technology and scientific principles to the planning, functional design, operation, and management of facilities for any mode of transportation in order to provide for the safe, efficient, rapid, comfortable, convenience, economical, and environmentally compatible movement of the people and the good transport. So now the point is, how has transportation changed people's lives? Right. The transportation has helped us to change the lives through facilitating trade, travels, and exchanges that we all know. Today, the transportation has become a core component in nearly all the activities. Without this, I would say the development activities is almost incomplete. So whenever we talk about something, about the developments of any communities, the development of any infrastructure, this transportation component cannot be ignored. For instance, when we look at the area where most of the Naga tribes inhabit, right? That habitation part, if you look at, it's a very small area, right? That this is the highlighted portion here. That so, this now the main concern that I have is: are we ready to improve the connectivity in these regions? The reason being, there is the famous quote, okay, from the U.S. President John F. Kennedy. It was famous line that saying that American roads are not good because America is rich, but America is rich because American roads are good. So now in this context, when I look at the developments of the Naga peoples, okay, if we talk about the developments of the Naga peoples, this the important trust, the important, the very pertinent, you know, the the area or the thoughts that we need to give is the connectivity. So now, should we look at when we talk about the connectivity, we have, again, there are so many alternatives, but the doable, we have to work on the doable framework. Whether should we go for the air connectivity or road connectivity, roadways, and so on and so forth. There are so many, choices, options are there. But yes, commonly, air connectivity, road connectivity, subs better. Now, for example, I just would like to here cite two, three examples out here. Now, the figure here, that this you can see on zip, many people, you see, our passengers got down and trying to take out, they're trying to remove this zip from this slushy area. The vehicle is not able to further, you know, uh, go ahead, move ahead. This is this happens in one of the Chandal district roads. Similar kind of road infrastructure. We have a very poor road connectivity in the northeastern part that we all know. So NH37 Impal Jiribam, between that, this kind of road infrastructure, that this kind of road conditions we have. I'm not saying that maybe today we have this. Now the road conditions are improving day by day, no doubt on that. But when we talk about the bringing a development within the community or within the state, within the districts, the transportation plays a pivotal role in it. And because of this lack of transportation, the public, particularly who are residing in the very interior, parts, now for those uh, habitations, uh, the connected with no motorable roads are, not no motorable roads, and also doesn't have a good facility good road facilities. Like in such circumstances, what happened is, you can see, even this someone is sick, someone falls sick, then he or she has to be transferred in this manner, even because we do not have a proper roads through which the patient can be taken to the hospitals. So now the point here is that, if we have to bring the development, okay, then development in the country or in the state, in the district, in the community, the backbone of the development is the connectivity, the transportation that I just would like to take up. Now here, I'm going to talk something like hi-fi. Here, we say in the transportation system, like we have like intelligent transportation system. Now here, in on the other hand, in my village, I belong to a village called Wainem, for example, that in my village, I do not have the proper road infrastructure, right? Now, you see, we all are, somehow by God's grace, we got the opportunity to, go ahead with the education. And today, by God's grace, we have seen the world. We are participating in the, national development policies, and in the international level, in the national level. I would say that we are blessed people. Now it's that high time for all of us to take, to have a, join together and do something for the community together, so that this kind of problems, the people who are living, behind us, should not face in future. That's the concern I have. I do not know whether my thought process is aligned with your themes or not. So the whatever I could, understand, based on that, I'm coming up. So now in today's time, as everyone, could realize that we have intelligent transportation system. We are totally, based on the technology. Now that this technology, made us a very, this thing simple to travel, and we can curtail down the traveling distance. And beforehand, we could speculate in which particular route the traffic is jammed, so that I can take alternative, routes, so wherein I can navigate it faster, or I can, have a comfort ride. So now the technologies are there now, but now what the point is here, even, the technology has advanced to that extent, even the vehicle to vehicle could communicate to each other, right? And without driver, the vehicles can now operate, navigate, and we have to just sit board in the car, and the car would take us to the destination, defined destination. Now that sorts of technology has come up. Now, therefore, the concern is that the our, requirements. What is our requirements, and how, where, how the development is going ahead. Okay, so when we compare it, there is a huge gap. Okay, so in that huge gap can be bridged only when we have a holistic approach, a holistic thought process to to bring up, or to, develop the our habitation, our the area where the people are, we people are living now. That we need to look at. That's the point. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, what we do, see, the transportation of goods from one location to another, again, is going to depends on the road. Now, since the road infrastructure structure is a very, important and essential component in this particular process. So when we talk about roads, there are, different types of roads, but majorly there are two types of roads: rigid pavement, flexible pavement. Now, when I talk about this type of pavement, now some of us might not be understanding what is rigid pavement, what is a flexible pavement. Now, the importance of taking up this topic is the constructions of proper road is very important. Now, say when we have it for the different, I would, let me put in this way: we have a different, climatic conditions. We have a different, geographical conditions. So based on the ground requirements, we have to take a call. At times, what happening is today, though there are so many engineers who are working in this front, they are not able to take a proper call. Now that due to which what the public is suffering. So now the proper call can be taken only when we have a proper, you know, proper, what's our thought process on on that context. That's the point I want to say. Now today, the constructions of the traditional kind of pavements is not an issue, but now the technology that today we have is like, if after constructions of this particular this kind of conventional road, traditional road, in due course this pavement would fail one day, because every material has its own life. So once this material attains its own life, it is going to degrade, it is going to deteriorate. Now the technology that now we are looking is now self-healing cracks. See, if there suppose on the pavement system, if any cracks happen to appear, that cracks which are being generated out here should be able to heal up by its own. So that kind of technology we are working on it. Okay, so in IIT Roorkee is also participating in such a very innovative thought process. I myself is actively involved in such innovative technologies. So now that I'm just thought of sharing with my people, or when I got to know that the Naga scholars would be interacting, then I thought that maybe the subject may not be directly, connecting with you all, but yes, to some extent, when we talk about the development, we can join hand to hand together, and whatever we know, what the best, depending upon the expertise that we have among us, that we can come forward together and join hand, and we can work for the community. That's the point I wanted to share with you. So this is how, there are. I would not like to read out the word by word of this. I would like to just explain in that way that there are concrete, in the rigid pavement is constructed with the concrete mix, and the flexible pavement is constructed with the bituminous, we call asphalt mixture. Okay, so there, depending upon the stiffness properties of these materials, their names have been classified, and the functioning, their functioning, way of functioning of this pavement also accordingly different. So now in case of rigid pavement, flexible pavement, this self-healing kind of pavement concept is introduced, and it's very much possible. So you would be pleased to learn that, in the concrete, now when there is a crack, see, if there is a concrete and the cracks are inevitable, but the crack should not be a structural crack, right? So therefore, what happening is when suppose the cracks comes up on the concrete surface, then now the point is to rectify that cracks itself is a great task. Now, but the innovative way of repairing that cracks, to have the self-healing phenomena, we can introduce bacteria genus Bacillus, okay, along with the calcium lactate, nitrogen, and the phosphorus as ingredients. So this bacteria, the beauty of this bacteria is that it can sleep in the concrete for up to a special, to 200 years also. So this is how that taking the benefits of this, the bacteria's lives, we can, what you call the repair the cracks of the concrete. So in that way, the technology we do have, and even in the constructions of the like asphalt road, the asphalt road is the pavement which is being constructed with the bituminous mix. Okay, so even compaction can be monitored, okay, in a very intelligent manner. So through which we can monitor the temperature, and then the critical that vibratory compaction to be given, if that ranges, and then what kind of adverse effect is going to happen, all those can also be mapped. So due to which precisely we can compact, the degree of compaction can be ensured, and the achieved the targeted density can be achieved, and so on and so forth. So we can do so many things now. So in the coming back to this self-healing asphalt mixtures.
Professor, I'm sorry to intervene. It's a very, very exciting talk, the self-healing roads and all that. But then, we are 20 minutes into your talk. So may I request you if you can kind of take it towards the conclusion in two,
Well,
3 minutes?
well. I'll do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'll do that. Thank you. So yeah, to some extent we have understood the self-healing as well, niches and all. Then now, what I would like to, what you call mention at this juncture is like, there are different methods for the revamping the existing pavement without procuring additional material from the borrow area quarries to take care of the environmental aspects. So in that way there are so many innovative methods we are coming up, we are working on, and using this kind of technology, particularly for the hill areas development. This kind of technologies are really useful. And how it's going to be useful? Yes, carbon emission is our main concern. So there would be significant reduction in the carbon emission, and also the construction can be speed up, and then we can build a robust kind of pavement system, and fuel consumption would be reduced significantly. Okay, and so on and so forth. So many things we can do. Now I would say that lastly, that there are so many technology, but for this particular talk, this would be the last the technology that I would like to mention. Geopolymer concrete. Okay, it's a kind of concrete. It's a concrete without cement. Now today, in today's time, concrete means with cement, right? Geopolymers, no doubt, it's not a very new concept, okay, in today's time. But for India, okay, this particular technology is upcoming, and then we are, this, I would say, it's an emerging technology in the construction industry. And the beauty of this geopolymer concrete is that, as I told you, without cement, using only waste materials, we are able to manufacture a stronger and more durable concrete than the conventional concrete. Okay, so now this kind of technology, we are working with the Ministry of Road Transport Highways, Government of India, the IIT. I am the one. I'm the principal investigator. So what I'm trying to say is that, see, we are already into a very innovative kind of technology to build, infrastructure in a beautiful manner, in a very economical manner, in a very sustainable modes. So with these few words, I would like to conclude my presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Professor Rang Sing Chung. I'm afraid that given the limitation in time, we may not have. I'm not going to invite questions at this point, but all the same, it was such a fascinating topic. Transportation, as we know, is very, very important, not only just to Nagaland, but for the nation. And left to yourself, I'm sure that you can explain many of these things very beautifully. If we had more time, which unfortunately we are very short of, given that we have 4 more speakers. So thank you so very much, Professor Ran Sing Chung, for being with us this afternoon. I will quickly move on to the next speaker, and for speakers, the next 4 speakers, I request that please limit to 15 or 16 minutes so that we can take a question or 2. So we have Professor Dr. Hewaza Lorin, Vice Principal, Tetso College from Dimapur, who will talk about the Naga approach ways of negotiation and New Age learning. Yes, Dr. Lorin.
So Professor Mahesh, can I take exit now?
Yes, yes, please do, please do. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us.
Have a nice time. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Lorin. And 15 minutes, please. Yeah, thank you.
All right, okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Chairperson, for this time. And thank you, NSA, also for giving me this opportunity to present this afternoon. It's a privilege for me to be sharing this session with other prominent scholars, with Professor Rang Sing Chung, Dr. Tei Kaiko, and Dr. Games. I hope that we can have a good discussion this afternoon. So the topic that I've chosen to present this afternoon is titled The Naga Approach, Ways of Negotiation and New Age Learning. And by New Age Learning, I refer to it as the online digital learning here. I've chosen this topic because I'm particularly interested in learning more about processes of meaning making and codes or systems of order that emerge in societies when they're confronted with either the unfamiliar or unknown. So this presentation is geared more towards sharing of ideas and exploring a notion whether this can be a feasible way to understand societies better and how we can use these codes and systems to create codes and formulate codes of our own. So let me just begin by sharing my screen with you all. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. I'm just going to make it smaller so that I can. Yeah. Okay, so in a sense, this study attempts to examine the different codes of conduct overall that govern societies, that create habit formations and cultural systems that are unique to each community and society, owing to which these codes or processes of meaning making, as I refer to them, allow for a deeper understanding of the complex ways in which negotiation, appropriation, and transition occur. It will posit that certain approaches and ways of negotiation are often guided by the already inherent cultural system responsible for the overall functioning of society. So for this purpose, I will be looking at two case studies or two disruptions, I would say, that occur in Naga society. One is an incident that I will be taking you all back to the colonial period, trying to merge tradition with modernity in this case. And another is an incident that occurs in our contemporary times with the disruption that has been created in the education sector with online learning. So the first incident that I examined will bring to the fore the Naga cultural and tradition practice of oath-taking or promise-making. And this will be looked at alongside the European notion of promise or written agreement that existed during the colonial period. And this is in an attempt to shed light on the different codes of conduct that guide these cultural life worlds. From the incident, one can hopefully observe the manner in which both the societies adhere to radically different cultural codes to resolve an issue. So when studying the culture of a society or a community, Clifford Geertz's definition of culture and the interpretation of cultures becomes a useful reference for me here. Culture, he says, is understood to be a symbolic universe in which acts are signs. Geertz said that, quote, man is an animal suspended in webs of significance that he himself has spun. I take culture to be those webs, quote, unquote. So the webs of significance that Geertz refers to are the signs in which the cultural life world of a community functions. The study of culture, therefore, must be an interpretive inquiry in search not of scientific laws, but of processes of meaning making. So now I'm going to take a shift back into the colonial period, and we're going to look at the entry of the European colonization with the entry of the Britishers into the Naga Hills in 1832. This was followed by a long period of administrative rule till about the 1940s. I think all of us are well aware of this. And in order to establish control, the British administrators, they employed different tactics. These different tactics impacted the socio-cultural life of the Nagas, and it also revealed large disparities between the Naga and the European universes as examined in the administrative discourse. Now, they introduced reforms and they implemented new laws and practices that all elicited mixed reactions from the Nagas, ranging from resistance to retaliation to acceptance and then submission as well. So colonial law and order was imposed also on incidences of murder and inter-clan feuds. And this was done through punitive and political expeditions, as revealed in a significant number of reports of the administrators of the Naga Hills. A cultural practice that the administrators strongly sought to prohibit was headhunting. And so I would like to discuss the measures that were adopted by the administrators in order to achieve this. And in doing so, hopefully we can see insights into European and Naga modes of understanding. So in a letter to the Chief Commissioner of Assam, which was dated 31st January 1899, A.H.L. Fraser, officiating secretary to the government of India, expressed the government's desire for information on 5 specific issues. In the interest of time, I won't be reading it out, but I hope you can see it on the screen. By this time, headhunting had already been banned by the colonizers on grounds of it being barbaric and a savage act. So although it's not overtly stated in the letter, the administrative interventions on the above issues, they ultimately had an adverse effect on the cultural practices and the social life of the Nagas. Now, one of the ways in which the administrative policies were implemented was by carrying out punitive expeditions against offenders of the ban on headhunting. And so I have examined one such expedition in response to the murder of an Angami Naga by the Lotha Nagas. It was on 19th April 1871. An Angami trader was murdered by a party of Lothas within the British administered territory, and he was returning from Jorhat with a supply of beads and salt when he was set upon by his assailants. So after a series of letters and deliberations between the administrators, a consensus was finally reached on an effective form of punishment. Now, the conclusion that was reached, this was reached after detailed examination of statements, depositions, retraction of statements, re-verification. Now, it's interesting to note here that prior to this, though, Major A.E. Campbell, let me just share my screen, the Deputy Commissioner of Sibsagar, in a letter to the personal assistant to the Commissioner of Assam, wrote that in 1844, Captain Bodhi, the officer in charge of number 6 survey, he had already visited the villages of the Lotha Nagas. And during this visit, the Lotha Nagas, they were made to enter into an agreement through a written statement. This was a written statement drawn by the magistrate of Sibsagar, which you can see on the screen, was to never quarrel with any Nagas in future and to inform the government if any other Naga attacked them. There was also mention of a fine, 500 rupees fine, and agreed to the destruction of their village, Chang. So as evident from the subsequent killing of the Angami trader, these initial measures by the colonizers, it looks like, proved inadequate to prohibit the practice of headhunting. So written agreements here were found to have no real exercise of authority over the Nagas or any binding value on them. And one reason for this could have been the fact that the Nagas were not used to such forms of arbitration, which were quite different from the traditions that they actually followed. The incident points to 2 things: that the colonial administration did not enjoy full hegemony over the people it ruled, and that there were limits to the exercise of its authority. It's important to note here that the measures taken by the colonizers to prohibit the practice of headhunting were drawn largely from, I would say, European notions of justice and punitive deterrence. For the Nagas, written statements, depositions are being tried in a court of law, which were important for the European model of justice that time, held no effective power over them, and they could not act as an effective deterrent against crime. So we can see how Captain Bodhi's written agreement held no real symbolic value for the Nagas. For them, for the Nagas, the assurance of a conduct was given in the form of an oath that was quite different from the written declaration. To give an example of an oath-taking ritual among the Rengma Nagas is to take an oath, a few hairs from the oath-taker's head was placed on a tiger's tooth. Then the swearer would stand in the open air while swearing, since it was necessary for him to be between the earth and the sky. And the swearing was done in a sort of set performa. And after all of that was over, the swearer would bite on the tiger's tooth. This is according to J.P. Mills. The entire village would then be required to follow Gena. And so there was a whole ritual process involved in this, which was diametrically opposed cultural systems, so that what signified value for one had no value for the other. For the Nagas, it was the oath-taking ceremony and not the written agreement that was instrumental in binding a promise of good conduct. Next, I would like to shift gears and look at the impact of online learning in the education sector in Nagaland, considered as a disruption to the whole education sector once the pandemic came in. Now, online education is not really a new phenomenon to the education sector around the world, as prior to the pandemic, we already had online courses that were being offered by universities and institutes in other parts of the world, reputed universities like Harvard, Stanford, and many others. But in Nagaland particularly, it hit at the heart of the education sector, as many teachers, students, and even parents now had to grapple with the sudden change of coming to terms with technology, finding out ways to access internet, and becoming comfortable with communicating online. So what I would like to do this afternoon when looking at this online learning is look at the college level learning by referring to a case study that was taken from my institute, TESOL College. At TESOL College, we use Google for Education. I think most institutes have adopted this now as well, where Google Classroom, Google Hangouts Meet is the primary platform for disseminating online learning. So when the pandemic broke out, there was a huge disruption in the education sector, and it was more or less, I could say, institutes were left with not much of a choice but to either cope and offer online education and meet the needs of the learners, or to put it very plainly, to either vanish or sink into an unknown future. So in this study here, I'm going to be focusing on the appropriation and the measures that had to be adopted at TESOL College among the whole staff and students to truly immerse itself into this new system of teaching and learning online. The intent here is to posit the gradual evolution of a system that required collective appropriation and negotiation from all stakeholders. So if we were to recall back to the beginning of the lockdown in Nagaland, it was on 16th March, where in view of the notification issued by the government of Nagaland on taking precautions towards the spread of COVID-19, all on-campus classes were temporarily suspended with immediate effect from 17th of March, 2020. And that was until further notice. Then a few days afterwards, it was followed by an indefinite lockdown on 22nd March. So at TESOL College, it was decided to begin testing for online classes from 18th March onwards. And so on day one of classes, which was on 19th of March, out of a total 44 teachers who held classes, all classes were held with different records of attendance, but we were able to start with the online classes for the HS, UG, and PG level. And we had recorded numbers ranging from like 100% to 75%, 65%, 60%, to as low as 32% of attendance, with 2 teachers on leave who were unable to conduct the online class. And over here too, the initial resistance did exist, but with the forced opportunity, it sort of presented a chance for the teachers and students to learn online tools and digital knowledge amongst them. So the introduction of this online learning, of course, did require a fair amount of existing practices and rules to be revised, and we had to re-implement many of them in order to create a practical, effective, and a safe learning environment for everyone. At the same time, we also knew that we could not easily replicate everything that was already being practiced in the Western world, since the Naga context, as we know it, is completely different. So some of the measures and practices that had to be imposed in order to proceed were, and I just wanted to cite a few things that had to be done. On 18th March, we rolled out testing, as I said earlier, and had to issue a list of virtual class do's and don'ts. This was followed by, on 20th March, we had to issue an online bullying notification by the disciplinary committee due to concerns that raised by staff of their photos being circulated and made fun of by the students. Then we also had to issue a frequently asked questions document about virtual class queries to help students deal with the frustrations and challenges of accessing the internet, how to save data, what about their attendance. Then again, on 21st March, virtual class survey was issued. This was to assess the overall effectiveness of the online learning and also help resolve any further issues. This was followed on 24th of June again with a second virtual class student survey, and teacher surveys also went out for further assessment and improvement. A couple of other things that we also had to do was we had to differentiate between synchronous and asynchronous learners and figure out, how to best meet the needs of both. Synchronous learners are those who can attend the sessions live, where the synchronous learners, they can review recorded class lessons. So depending on when they get internet connectivity. So other changes, other things, what we figured out from this assessment was that this survey was done again on August 2020, where for the first semester students, we had a total of 741 learners online, but out of that, 604 were synchronous and 137 students were asynchronous. And then it also required a lot of other changes from our end too, like reducing the duration of the class period, changing the frequency of classes in a week in a timetable, total change in attendance policy, recording classes now, and also upskilling and taking additional Google training courses, digital citizenship courses within a very short span of time.
Dr. Lorraine, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Another 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. I'm just going to wrap up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
So, yeah. So all of these practices that had to be implemented, what I'd like to establish here is that ultimately, this all became like an established code of conduct that was mandatorily required in order to maintain a sense of normalcy towards the continuity of education. And this is where I'd like to point out that a new code or practice began to formulate itself, automatically imposed by the online world, the pandemic, while also having to fine-tune itself to the Naga context and the practical realities over here. So I choose to pause it here now about how it can be seen that these codes of conduct and these established systems become so important to understanding effective ways of creating processes and meaning making. And we can also observe that there's a constant negotiation that often needs to take place with every repetition as these acts or practices become more internalized into our way of life. So in this study, although I'm, however, in no way claiming that codes alone can define or limit or restrict a society. However, I'm just putting forth the notion that they can serve as helpful aids at arriving at a starting point to figure out ideal ways of negotiating with the unfamiliar. At the same time, one can also observe that there are possibilities of new meaning making or new articulation, which of course in the case of online education is yet to be explored in much more depth, but they're already partially underway, we can see, as we can see new tools being added to online learning related to grading, creating tests, providing more effective ways of providing online feedback, and all those other means to improve the system. With regard to education, the process does in many ways present for us so a new set of possibilities about the future direction that education can or that it may follow, are also largely determined by the responses of students, teachers, parents, civil society, mostly the education sector in our state as a whole. So in conclusion, the study seeks to establish, in studying the incident, these two incidents, the disruption that occurred during the colonial period and the disruption that is occurring today in the field of education, where we see a pervading presence of codes of conduct or understanding these processes of meaning making that can help us to renegotiate with the unfamiliar, serving as hopefully helpful aids towards arriving at a breakthrough or figuring out further. And when it comes to online education, figuring out ways in which we can leverage on the advantages of online learning, or how we can equate online degrees with full-time degrees, or how to respond to even new codes in general when negotiating or confronting with that of the unfamiliar. Thank you so much. And with that, I'd just like to conclude my presentation.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Lorraine. I can see how you are using Google for the education at TETSO, and it is very rare that we see a PowerPoint, not exactly a PowerPoint presentation, a presentation made using Google Docs. So that clearly, generally it is the Microsoft PowerPoint that is used, but then we see that you have used Google here to make a PowerPoint presentation, which shows how effectively you're using Google tools at your college. So is there a question from anyone? We can take maybe one question if anyone has, because I think there are a lot of learnings, particularly with respect to education, using online tools. Specifically what we are talking about, the Google tools here. She mentioned about Google Classrooms, about Google Meet, Hangout, and so on, how effectively it is being used at a college level. So if there is any one question we can take. Okay, so I guess there aren't any. Of course, you can always be in touch with Dr. Lorraine. I myself might want to get in touch with you sometime, because I've been using Google Meet to take classes, which I find more effective than MS Teams, which is our organizational tool. But somehow, not only me as a teacher, but also the students, very I would say the ease of handling. So but then some of the things that you mentioned I haven't used, including Google Classroom. If Google Meet gives so much of I would say help, I'm sure that the classroom would be far more effective. So once you get to use, maybe if there is something, I might want to touch base with you sometime. So thank you very much, Dr. Lorraine, for your presence here and for this wonderful talk. Thank you very much. We move further into the program. So the next speaker is Dr. Keditsu. She would be talking about Insta Natives, the Naga bodies on Instagram. I'm sure Instagram, social media tool. I'm not on Instagram myself, more on Facebook and Twitter, but Instagram is a rage among students. It will be good to hear. Dr. Keditsu, over to you. 15 minutes,
Thank you very much, Professor Mahesh, for this opportunity, and to NSA. I will go immediately to my paper, which I've tried to keep very brief in the hope that I can accommodate some questions and discussion. The body in traditional Naga culture is vocal and visible. If one can anachronistically conceptualize a Naga self, it would be one that is embodied, one that is entrenched in networks of kinship, whether it was gender, class, status within one's clan or village, or one's broader village or tribal identity. It was the body first that declared it, much before speech and pleasantries or conflict confirmed it. From markings and modification of the actual body in the form of tattoos, piercing, hairstyles, to clothing and adornments placed on the body, it is my judgment that speaking with and through our bodies was a crucial and spectacular way of owning and conveying one's own identity. It is no wonder then that fashion in its modern sense is a practice that comes naturally to most Nagas. Now, what is Instagram? An app created for iPhone 4, Instagram was released on October 2nd, 2010, until 2015 restricted to a single square format and gave users all over the world the same set of controls for editing photos. In Instagram, Lev Manovich writes, I quote, different elements of photo culture that throughout the 19th and 20th century were separate now have been combined in a single platform. Camera, photo paper, a darkroom, exhibition spaces such as galleries, and publication venues such as magazines exist together in one handheld device. This single platform medium is a remarkable development in the history of modern media. It allows you to capture, edit, and publish photos, view photos of your friends, discover other photos through search, interact with them, like, comment, repost, post to other networks, enter into conversations with photo authors and others who left comments, create photo collections, change their order, etc., all from a single device. In modernity at large, Arjun Appadurai sees our current modern world as an interactive system that has witnessed a technological explosion which has created communities with no sense of place. He proposes that the universal or global socializing and social practice is the imagination. Centering my epistemology in imagination as social practice, we can look at the ways Nagas, in particular the youth, navigate this new placeless world of social media, to analyze their behavior therein as survival, adaptive, but also as disruptive strategies. If imagination now defines agency, images may then be understood as a new language in and through which identities are articulated or performed on Instagram. Guattari notes our aptitude for creating selves and proposing a more fluid notion of subjectivity. As an ethical aesthetic project, subjectivity is constantly in the making, a creative process that is, in the words of Simon O'Sullivan, multivalent and polyphonic. If mass media is characterized by the creation of content by a few powerful elite and disseminated to the faceless multitude, the era of social media allows for the inversion of this relationship. True, the medium and mode are still predominantly determined by the owner-creators of these sites or apps. Nevertheless, within the set parameters of interaction and behavior is a vast labyrinth that offers enough variation and play that one can argue it almost simulates what many may consider freedom. Within these modalities of pseudo-free play, Instagram allows the faceless or many-faced multitude to create content and populate the said universe with image, text, interactions of their choosing. In light of this scenario, Guattari's argument that, I quote, new technology, in particular new machines of communication and information, open up new universes of reference, close quote, allowing for new productions of subjectivity on a signifying register and also on an affective one, becomes highly significant. It is no wonder that the inherent visuality of Instagram allows for, and perhaps even facilitates, bodies and fashion to be the focal reference of identity. This is particularly true of the Nagas, who may be one of the most astute practitioners of visual culture when it comes to clothing and fashion. This may stem, as I've said earlier, from a traditional culture where attire functioned both at the levels of signification and affect. Learning these codes ensured literal survival in the days of headhunting. It signified that the wearer belonged to one's own tribe or village, or that he or she did not. It conveyed or evoked emotions of solidarity, affection, respect, or fear. From the days of old till present, learning what to wear and how to appear has been a crucial skill and survival strategy. It is no wonder that circumstances that brought about a separation of our dress from our identities, and by extension our culture, have also resulted in deep-seated scars and traumas in our individual and collective psyches. Dolly Kikon understands the unclothing of the Naga body as an act of resistance to colonial and religious subjugation, the rejection of Western dress and notions of modesty as a way of reclaiming one's indigenous identity. Given our propensity for appearance, Nagas have used attire and fashion as a means of gaining cultural capital, as well as a means of reconnecting with a cultural past that was violently separated from us upon conversion. The sources of the image I've used for this paper is at Naga street style and is my point of entry into my main arguments. Begun by two Naga sisters with a professed love for fashion, this Instagram handle seeks to collate and document what they term live street style. For the fashion illiterate, that is jargon for the looks people put together daily for everyday events using clothes, accessories like shoes, jewelry, handbags, and makeup. As of today, they have 104,000 followers. The modes of creating content range from the handle owners scouting events or everyday times and spaces for people who they deem have interesting personal style, to combing through the universe of social media and selecting images of individual users. Content contribution also works the other way, where Instagram users tag Naga street style on particular photos or looks if they wish to be featured. Whether the said image or look finally ends up on the handle is left to the discretion of the owners. Since November 2017 or thereabouts, Naga Street Style has created space to exclusively feature looks that incorporate traditional wear, both in its pure and fusion forms. As a recognized influencer, a term used for social media users who have a noticeable influence on taste and behavior, the creation of this space has, in turn, significantly swayed its public's desire and choice to wear traditional wear on more occasions. The success of their #roots feature has spawned a number of handles dedicated to featuring people from specific Naga tribes in their tribal attire. A few examples are Angami Gallery, Sumi Gallery, Ao Tribe official page, Kyamyungan, Being Konyak. And there are also other handles, Tangkul, Yarsho, Lashio Gallery, Bumai Naga official, etc., and many more, representing Nagas with indigenous lands in other states. Taborlang T. Karsitiu sees fashion as a site of resistance, a means to challenge the imposition of a pan-Indian identity that often erases Northeastern idiosyncrasies. If fashion is a signifying practice that underscores process over fixity, it is a perpetual signifier that can absorb a myriad multiplicity of identities, transmitting them as one and many at the same time. I propose that these traditional looks created for Instagram consumption are carefully constructed ideological statements, as are the looks or fashion statements that play with permutations and combinations of ethnic and contemporary fashions. These images challenge the notion of Nagas as disconnected from their indigenous roots, or as tourist gaze-mongering natives in costume. Rather, they argue for a dynamic engagement with one's traditional materials and a desire to keep them relevant. In a multicultural context, agency and proficiency in choice-making manifest as the ability to create pastiche. Contradictions do not undermine representation. It is, in fact, the structuring element. The growing body of Instagram images of Nagas wearing their traditional attire in full or combined with other fashions produced by Nagas themselves and often for the consumption of Nagas themselves is evidence of the way in which Nagas are taking control of their own representation in visual discourse and dismantling the long-held stereotype of naked Nagas. Because Instagram allows users to create, edit, frame, and disseminate images of bodies that they have deliberately styled, the Naga body is no longer subject to the restrictive regime of another's camera. Or if we are also to consider the caption and hashtag features, as we should, to the power of another's pen. It is 2020. There are few in the world who are not digital natives. Thanks to Instagram, Nagas are able to take this term natives, one that has oppressed us for so long, and refract it with spectacular displays that reclaim our past, reform our present, and realign our course for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Keritsu. This was a very fascinating talk. I wish there were some Insta visuals for us to see the Naga fashion,
Yes,
but it will be very interesting to go and check these.
Yes.
You know, it's very.
That was the plan, but you know, I on an emergency I had to travel. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so very much for also finishing in time. It was very, very, you know, I would say very interesting talk. And you know, even as you spoke about the various facets of Naga fashion, I could visualize how colorful it would be on these Insta pages, many of them that you said. So maybe at some point in time, some of us would want to go and explore these pages. But is there any question from any of them? If not, you know, Dr. Keritsu seems to be in a hurry. So yeah, so there are comments. Thank you for your wonderful presentation that's coming in from you know, the participants here. So Dr. Keritsu, thank you so very much once again for being with us.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we move ahead. So the next talk is on learning in the digital age, bridging the gap in higher education among Nagas. So this is by Dr. Kaiko Ashuni. She is from the EMPC in IGNO. So Dr. Ashuni, yes, over to you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mahesh. I hope my screen is visible to all.
It is visible. You can put it in PowerPoint. Yes, now it is good to go. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So as already introduced, my paper today is on learning in the digital age, bridging the gap in higher education among Nagas. So I will quickly go to how I'm going to move forward in the presentation. I will briefly introduce, as an introduction, look at how modern education system, which is basically a westernized form of education, how it came to the Naga area, and how ICT use in open and distance learning system can the learning from the open and distance learning system, how we can contextualize in the Naga context and see where, if we can learn something from the research base from ODL. Okay, so we all know that modern education system among the Nagas was perhaps brought into the Nagas by the American missionaries in the mid-19th century. And their main purpose was conversion, as we know, but they use education as a tool to reach to the people. And I put here a quote from Arkatong Longkumar. The missionaries in their process for conversion introduced education infrastructure and print technology. And initial attitude of indifference or resistance towards such Western culture shifted as the Nagas realized that social and economic advantages accompanied the Christianity and also the education. So we began to embrace the modern system of education, and it had serious repercussions. And our Morung system of education and also the oral culture, they took a backseat. And it had serious repercussion, as we all know, but the scope of my paper does not permit me to go into that area. But I would like to look at, after we embrace this modern system of education and became the so-called literate society, where do we stand now? As we see, the literacy rate among the two states where prominent Nagas live, as we see, the literacy rate of Nagaland is 80.11 and Manipur 79.85. And this ranking is quite high, 15 and 16 respectively among all the Indian states. And however, as we see the gross enrollment ratio, which of the higher education, we see that there is a dip, and the national average is 26.3, but we see that Nagaland is much below the national average with 18.7. And Manipur, though higher than the national average, if we see the ST, the scheduled caste average, it is only 23.5, and the ST is where Nagas would be. And I'm taking only the example of Manipur and Nagaland, but I'm sure these are similar even in the other states where Nagas live. So what happened to the literacy rate from the school education and then going up to higher education? So what could be some of the reasons why this drop? So possibly it is because we, for the purpose of accessing higher education, we would migrate. And migration, if not the main reason, education, if not the main reason for our migration, it is one of the very prominent reason for migration to small towns and big cities. And as we know, and we have already seen in the first presentation, our villages are very far and the road and transportation facilities are very bad, very poor. So we have to move out of our remote and small villages, and also to have a sustainable educational institute in the smaller villages and remote parts is quite not feasible because it is not sustainable. Private institutes cannot run, and sadly government institutes do not quite function even at the school level. So we can well imagine what will happen. We cannot even imagine having higher institutes in these areas. And so I put a picture here just for us to visualize the road condition of the Naga area. This is the national highway. This is shot at Maram, and in this place there is in fact a very famous college also. But this is the condition of the national highway, so you can all imagine how it must be in the smaller and remote places. So what can we learn from the ODL system, which is the open and distance learning education, and which actually started using ICT or information and communication technology in its very inception. So, and I would like to quote here Lazar and Tolosa, who says that while the conventional education were still using chalk and blackboard for their face-to-face teaching, the ODL system was already using the ICT, the information and communication technology to reach its remote learners. So it began with the British Open University, which started in 1969. And the same model was adopted by India's National Open University, the Indira Gandhi National Open University, while the Open University of Britain used BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, to develop its educational program. IGNOU had its own TV channel and radio channel, and now is also using the digital platform in all forms. Facebook, YouTube, and so on. And regular interactive sessions are being held, and also synchronous learning and asynchronous learning are both happening. So, and the marriage of the open and distance learning and ICT has been able to somehow bridge what Michael G. Moore would call the transactional distance, which is the psychological and the communication space that learners and teachers face, not only because of the distance, but also because of many other barriers that they have, the distance that they feel psychologically. And this happens not only in the case of open and distance learning, but also in the classroom, where the students are not able to connect or understand, and the learner and the teacher is not able to connect and understand. But through the use of technology, this has been bridged to a great extent. So how has this marriage between open and distance learning and ICT been able to achieve? So it has been able to democratize higher education to a large extent. And we see that the gross enrollment ratio is contributed a lot by the open and distance learning. And the open and distance learning is also able to reach a very special clientele who are otherwise not able to go to the conventional universities, not because they are academically weaker than the others, but mostly because of the systemic disadvantage that they face. And many of our Naga people who live in the far-flung areas, though they are academically interested and capable, are not able to reach higher education because of the systemic disadvantage as well. And Open University and ICT together has been able to, because of the large number of students that they are able to accommodate in the university system, it has also become cost effective. So even the poorest students are able to afford this kind of an education. So in the words of Professor G. Ram Reddy, who is the father of India's open and distance education, this too has been able to throw open the ivory towers of education to the mass. So digital learning possibilities among the Nagas. So I see here, through this paper, I would like to say that Nagas also need to, in a very visible sense, we should be able to increase our gross enrollment ratio. Then only we will be able to remain relevant in a knowledge society. And as already pointed out by earlier speaker, we have seen that the pandemic has triggered a different kind of education system for which we were not quite prepared for. And there I see a desperate replication of the conventional classroom system to an online or virtual platform. How effective the system would be is fully yet to be seen, but it may not be as effective as we hope it will be. I hope I am wrong, but I see that it may not be as effective as we would want it to be. And so in this case, I thought it would be appropriate for us at this juncture to look at what we can learn from the researchers of ICT and ODL and apply it to our context. So I am pointing out a few ideas or issues that we can discuss and apply it to our context. First is the issue of acceptance. A major setback to the use of ICT in education is the indifference and resistance to technology integration among stakeholders. And this resistance is at different level, but in the case of open and distance learning, researchers have seen that this resistance is mostly found in field faculty members who are teachers of the conventional universities, but are recruited as part-time counselors for the open universities. And this trend is not only in India, but across South Asian open universities. And so the open universities, they try to overcome this by motivating their field faculties through training and orientation. And to a large extent, it has been successful. The other issue would be access. And it is seen that India has been very innovative in its use for and diversified technology to provide university level education, but in the process have widened the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And we all know that many households in India still cannot afford a television set or a computer device. And so for this, infrastructure building advocacy should go on hand in hand, but at the same time, I see a hope in mobile learning. So mobile has become quite an affordable device, and along with it, coupled with it, the affordability of internet data packages has made mobile actually a tool for the masses. So we can really make use of mobile learning as one of our strategies. And in terms of utilization, there was seen that there is a gap between the intended use and the actual use of the educational content. And it was seen that this is the main reason for this gap is because the educational content were inappropriately designed. So for example, and also the device affordance, that each device has different advantages and certain limitation. So those were not considered and inappropriately placed in different device, because of which it is not effective. For example, when using a mobile phone screen, it is small. So if a program has been designed for viewing in computer and the same thing without redesigning is being used in mobile phone, then it will not be as effective as it is supposed to be. Or for example, if a text is supposed to be read, but is presented in the form of PPT, then it will be too overloaded and will not be as useful or as interesting to the learner as it should be. So these were some of the reasons that that learners were not using. And also, like the previous speaker was talking about, our generation, our younger generation are becoming what is called the digital native, and our educational content are not designed to meet the needs of the digital natives. And these digital natives are said to have shorter attention span, and they are more visual and graphic oriented, and they dislike or auditory learning such as lecture-based learning, but they prefer collaborative learning, learning from each other and learning by doing. And earlier speaker also talked about this asynchronous and synchronous learning system. So, and for the case of the Nagas, I thought asynchronous learning, especially in terms of reaching out to the remotest part of the region, would be able to address, because this not only address the issue of connectivity, but also looks at it's flexible for learners who play multiple roles, especially women who also has to play the role of taking care of homes and other agricultural activities. So if they are given a flexibility in when they can learn and how they can learn at their time, then it may prove to be more beneficial. And also the researchers in ODL again has seen that greater sense of control in general is what they feel when it is an asynchronous learning. And also women learners have expressed that they're able to express their opinions and and be part of a discussion more freely in an online asynchronous platform rather than in a classroom platform. And also it was seen that when it comes to discussion related to the study, it is more of a quality discussion because the learners are able to think through what they have to say before, and not just say it as it comes. So that is another thing. And also the other thing that is seen was that there's a lack of use for, there's widespread use of digital devices, but there is lack of use for learning. And this is also one of the reasons for this is they lack basic skills to learn through in an online platform. While there is a contradiction because they're using it and even to the point of addiction, but they are not able to use it for learning purpose. And they're not able to use it for self-empowerment and develop higher order thinking, and also to collaborate for learning with each other. So, and also it was seen that the teachers are also not skilled in content development, planning learning activities and teaching strategies and assessment. So we become mere users and not content developers. So in this regard, I propose that the media and information literacy will play a big role in helping us go forward. And as UNESCO would say, that media and information literacy is the skill to be able to find, evaluate, not only find and evaluate the content that we have, but also to produce them and use it to empower ourselves. So if we integrate this media and information curriculum, which are already available even for India, right from the school.
Dr. Ashwini, maybe a couple of minutes
This
more?
is my last slide.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, this is my last slide. Yeah. So if we prioritize media and information literacy right from the school level, then I think it will go a long way. And also prioritize in our policies and strategies, and for making safe online spaces, and also for allocating of funds for dissemination of training for crucial sectors like education, we then will be able to create our own counterbalance to the dominant culture, and thus become visible, and our stories can be told in creative and engaging way, and thus protecting cultural diversity, multilingualism and pluralism. And the consequence of not doing at this critical juncture, we will be paying a high price, and there will be an additional disparity between those who are able to and those who are unable to find, analyze, and critically evaluate and use media content. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwini. Again, this was a very pertinent talk. You know, the requirement to increase our gross enrollment ratio, very aligned to the national education policy also, as all of us know, where we are looking at increasing the gross enrollment ratio to 50% by 2035. So, and also you have forcefully highlighted this and also highlighted the issues and very potential, and I would say some of very feasible solutions in achieving this through digital means. Again, I apologize for not being able to invite questions, because looking at the clicking, the clock ticking away, I think we need to move to the next speaker, who is also whose presentation is already up on the screen, Dr. Kame, who is going to talk about the nanotechnology and future opportunities. An exciting topic this too, because we know in India we talk about information technology, biotechnology, and the new technology. Not exactly new, I think he will tell us, you know, it's been around for some time now, but then there's a lot of emphasis from the government, the nano mission of the Department of Science and Technology, and all that, and immense opportunities that this technology offers us. Yes, Dr. Kame, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. Yeah, please start. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon I'll be talking about nanotechnology and future opportunities. I have quite a number of slides, but then I'll try to make it as brief as possible. Okay, I'm not being able to put my video on. I'm not sure why, but then I hope you can hear me, right?
We can hear you, we can see the slides,
Okay.
but it will be good to see you too, if because other speakers also had their videos on, if it is possible.
Right.
You can try. If not, doesn't matter.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be working. Yeah, I think we go ahead.
Okay. Okay, I think, yeah, it doesn't seem to show my video. Anyway, okay, so, sorry. So yeah, I'll be going ahead with my slides. So so let me just dive into my slide number 1. So I'm sure everyone must have heard about nanotechnology and nanoscale. Ideas about nanoscale, I'm sure everyone must have heard about it. We're talking about something really small. So 1 nanometer is billionth of a meter, which is 10 to the power minus 9 meter. And I have given some examples of how small the nanometers are if we look from feet to meters to nanometers. So a girl with a 4 feet tall, if we break it down to nanometers, it would be 1.219 billion nanometers, or considering a human hair, which is on average of 10 micrometer wide. If we break it down to nanometers, it's around like 10,000 nanometers, or 10 hydrogen atoms would give us 10 nanometers, or human DNA would give us 2.5 nanometers wide, and so on. So, so what exactly is this nanotechnology? So nanotechnology is about making this useful things, or manufacturing these useful things by manipulating matters or atoms at nanometer length scale, which and usually of 10 to 100 nanometers. And so what is so special about this nanometer scale, or is that the properties, when we reduce from the bulk material to nanoscale, the properties differs a lot. And so there are unique properties that shows up when we reduce the materials to nanoscale. So making use of these unique properties that arises from this nanoscale and building materials, or manufacturing things by manipulating matters at this length scale, we usually term it as nanotechnology. So it can even, it may not necessarily be just an object created in nanoscale form, but it can even be micro or macro scale object. So, so what is special about this this nanoscale? So the main specialty of this nanoscale is the surface to volume ratio. So nanomaterials have a large surface to volume ratio. For example, I have given here 30 nanometer iron particles has 5% of its atom on the surface, but a 3 nanometer particle has 50% of its atom on the surface. And so the function of atoms on the surface, which are not bonded, are more active than the atoms in the bulk. So the atoms on the surface tends to be more than the atoms inside the volume of the particles. So the surface to volume ratio large increases when we reduce any materials to nanoscale. So moving on. Okay, so what are the properties that changes? Almost all the properties actually changes from bulk. When we change a material from bulk to nanoscale. We have physical properties such as the basic properties such as this melting point or the specific heat or the color of the material, or chemical, electrical, mechanical, optical, magnetic, and so on. So various properties of material changes when we reduce the material to nanoscale. So very common example is gold. As we know that gold, it has a high melting point. In bulk, it usually melts at 1064 degrees Celsius, but then you reduce the size of gold particles to nanoscale, then the melting point also decreases. And not just the melting point actually, but then the color of gold also changes when you change the size or reduce the size of the gold particles. And so back then in olden days, they used this pottery making of different various colors. But then they had no idea that nanoparticles were involved in here. But then we have been using this gold, we have been using this nanoparticles from before. But then the realization came a little bit late. And for example, is this ruby glass containing this dispersed gold particles during this glass making process, creating a different kind of colors. And not just this pottery and pottery making, but then we see in the church and all where you can see different colors of glass they use in the windows. And so those are involves this gold, different gold nanoparticle sizes. So these are some of the physical properties that we see when we reduce materials to a nanoscale. And one of the important interesting actually material, nanomaterial is also carbon nanotube, where we are familiar with the graphite or a diamond graphite, which we use in our pencil lead, which is, those are all carbons actually arranged in different forms. So carbon nanotube is also just another form of carbon, but then it's like rolled up, or it's like a rolled up cigarette kind of, you know, so carbon. So if we it's actually, or on the other words, we can say it's a graphite sheet rolled in a tube. So these carbon nanotubes are also one of the interesting nanomaterials, which a lot of research has been put on. And some of the properties why it is interesting is that this carbon nanotube, or CNT, which it's extraordinarily strong. So it shows 100 times stronger than steel. It weighs just 1/6, and it can, CNT can be in metallic or in semiconducting or silicon, like in the computer chips we see. It can be any form, and it's mind-boggling actually to know that just 4 grams of CNT, if we calculate the surface area, it comes to the same surface area with that of the football field. So it has a very high electrical conductivity, high thermal conductivity. So the area of applications is quite wide in this kind of materials as well. So other nanomaterials, it can be in the form of nanoparticles or powders, or it can be in the form of rods or dendrimers. By using different chemicals and compounds, we can grow or synthesize nanoparticles, nanopowders for various different applications. So, okay, so the impact of nanotechnology using various materials are in quite a in almost everywhere, actually, in all the applications. I mean, in various fields we can integrate or we can use, starting from electronic computing to space explorations, etc. And so nanotechnology is not just any single technology. Instead, it is an enabling technology. It will enable our present technology to more advanced, in a more advanced form. So, so evolution of computers, for example, as we can see that in the past, there is this thing called mainframe computer, where thousands of people are sharing this mainframe computer, just one big computer. In the present, we have this personal computing, which we all have a PC, this personal computing. But then in future, we using this nanotechnology, we can have computers in our, like walls or chairs, clothings, light switches, or, even in our like belts or whatever. So we can all connect, these computers can all connect to one another. So these are some of the applications where integrating, or with the advancement of this nanotechnology, it can give to the future. And we all, just small examples of technology learning from, we always look at the nature of how nature works and how things works and how human brain works. And so in the same way, people are trying to develop sensors or a chip where it can function as human brain. Like we have this sensing ability, different kinds of sensing ability, or information storage or information processing, and all these things. So nanotechnology will enable, or it can enable, such kind of functions as well, a brain-like system. Another example where just in electronics, where it can integrate various sensors. And even in our group, there is this team working on sensors like gas sensing and or air quality sensing, etc. And so here we have in future, we can people are trying to develop this integrate the sensors in the refrigerators, where it can, like just automatically tell you whether your food is degrading, or the expiry date of whatever products that or foods that you're putting in your refrigerators, etc. And so those kind of smart functionings, the impact of nanotechnology will be bringing. And another example is also the ability in health and medicines, where the ability of sequencing this entire human genome, and people are working on this as well, which is quite an interesting field, where most of the right now we go to a hospital, and then we share our health issues, and then it is and based on the statistical what do I say statistical based on statistics, that like a number of people have taken such and such medicines, and it is helping us. And so the doctor would give us the similar medicines. So but then, in future, the ability to sequence this human genome, it will enable us to get this individualized medicine, a personal medicine, which would treat the particular problems or the issues that you are facing. So another example is also targeted drug delivery, which is actually a topic which I worked in my PhD. So it is also called a thermotherapy, which is a heat treatment basis. It is also called a hyperthermia therapy or thermotherapy, where it can assist the cancer treatment or the chemotherapy, or it can be an adjunct to this chemo or this chemotherapy or radiotherapy. So as we know that cancer, we have millions of new cases arising every year and a number of deaths because of these cancer diseases. So the principle of hyperthermia is that using these nanoparticles, which is actually a particle which can generate heat. So it is actually a magnetic nanoparticle. So where you put the, okay, before I go into that, so you designed the nanoparticles with other biocompatible polymers attached to it and antibody attached to it, and then you inject it in your blood vessels, or because the nano size is really small, we can talk about less than 20 nanometers also. So it can easily flow through your blood vessels, and you inject in your body, and then you can maneuver the particles in the targeted area, the area where you're having cancer cells. Suppose you're having a breast cancer, and then you can target, or you can maneuver these nanoparticles into the area, and then apply an external magnetic field. And you can apply an alternating magnetic field, where this magnetic moments, or this the magnetic moments, or this magnetic nanoparticles can keep altering according to the alternating field and generate heat. And so let's just briefly, I have I don't know if it's clear or not, but anyway, so what we do was that we designed this different magnetic nanoparticles, and we study the structure of the materials, the magnetic property of the material, and check the heating ability of the material, how much heat it can generate in this alternating, if we place it in an alternating magnetic field. So that is the whole, actually, the whole principle, or the idea of the work during my PhD. So here we have nickel ferrite, which is also one of the magnetic material. So this is also heat generating nanoparticles, which we saw it from this, we took the image from the scanning electron microscope, and which is quite a big size, actually around 100 nanometers. And we intend to reduce these particles to even lesser size, less than 50 nanometers or so. So using this nanoparticles, we intend to develop the coat this particle with other biocompatible polymers or biocompatible materials, which can which will not affect our body system. One may ask why, whether it is dangerous or not, like injecting nanoparticles in our body to treat the cancer cells, or, but then the biocompatibility factor is also there, where we have to design it. And also at the same time, due to the small size, it doesn't affect much in our body system. It just our immune system take care of this the particles. So
I think we need to conclude in a minute or so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just conclude this. This is just a small highlight of this temperature and time measurement, where these are data of different nanoparticles, and so we can see that the amount of heat generated by the amount of heat generated by this nickel zinc ferrite nanoparticles is quite high. Within few seconds of time, like 1.5 minutes, we are getting this 43, we're getting more than 43 degrees centigrade. So our body actually, our body can, these cancer cells are more sensitive to heat. So whereas our human healthy cells can, sustain up to 46 degrees, but then cancer cells usually is known to die, like at around 43 degrees. So that's why we do this chemotherapy and all. So, but then when we talk about chemotherapy, like it kills both the cancer cells as well as the healthy cells. That's why we get this weakness in the body. So we intend to use these nanoparticles just to target only the cancer cells without harming the healthy cells. So that's the whole intention of this work. So in conclusion here, nanotechnology will be the technology of 21st century. It is a very broad and enabling technology base that will impact the entire economic spectrum. And it has been globally recognized around the world. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Kamei. I think we have already overshot our time, and I got alerts already from the organizers to wind up the session because they have a session slated at 4 o'clock. So I am not going to invite questions, but then profusely, before I leave and close the session, profusely thank all the speakers. I am probably the only non-Naga in this audience, so it has been a very enriching and a great learning experience for me. I mean, not only meeting the wonderful speakers here, but also some of these topics, all very important topics, whether you're talking about transportation engineering, the emerging technologies in that, or the Naga approach to the ways of negotiation and new age learning, the insta natives, also the call for bridging the gap and improving the enrollment ratio among Nagas, and finally the nanotechnology and the opportunities that lay ahead. Technology of the 21st century, as was mentioned in the last slide. So I think it was personally speaking, for me, it was time very well spent, very enriching, 1 hour and 45 minutes that went by. And I hope all our speakers who joined us are here or on Facebook were having enriched by listening to the speakers. So thank you so very much, and especially I would like to thank the session coordinator, Dr. Shelby Sankil, and Dr. Suchama Indan, my friend who brought me here amidst you this afternoon. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahesh, and also the 5 speakers and the rapporteurs for this session, Pamio and Dr. Silas. We have a session coming up at 4. This will also be parallel sessions and very interesting topics. So those of us who are right now tuned to this particular session, I'd like to invite you to these sessions also. And thank you very much, Mahesh, for the calm sharing of this session. And I think we didn't overshoot too much our time, maybe 5 minutes. And that is, I think, negotiable in a context like Delhi or India for that matter. So thank you very much, and I hope to see all of you in the next sessions.
I'll come in 1 second.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shelby. You have done a very great job as the session organizer. And well, a huge thanks to Professor Mahesh, who has been a huge blessing to Naga Scholars Association. Many people may think that this may be his first visit to Naga Scholars Association, but he had delivered a special talk in NSA platform as well a year back. Yeah, thank you very much, Mahesh, for so efficiently chairing the session, and to all the speakers for the presentation and the rapporteurs as well. Well, without looking out, we will continue the next session after maybe around 7 minutes keep. So there are, it's a parallel session. So for those of you who would like to join the other session, you may just flip through your mobile or your mobile or laptop and see whichever session is interest to you. You may decide and you can join. The other session also just finished. It was a very interesting, interactive session. So it's over now, both the session. So after a gap of say 7 minutes, we will continue with the next, the last session of the international webinar. And of course, at 7 p.m., we are going to have the valedictory function at 7 p.m. And we have a very prominent personality who will be delivering the keynote speaker. So I would like to also request all of you to stay back and join us the valedictory session as well. So thank you very much to every one of you, to all the participants, for being so good, for being so productive